Good morning. Welcome to episode 25 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a while. yeah, I think this is the first podcast I posted in like 18 days. Yeah, I've been crazy busy. That's all I can really say. I went on a little vacation with my lady. We went to go see my parents, and that was really nice. And I honestly just didn't really feel like recording while I was at my parents' place. There's a lot of kind of like, I don't want to say unexpected sounds when I'm there, but I don't really want to have both my parents kind of work around that, or I don't want to record in my car or whatever. So I honestly just thought it'd be best if I took a little mini hiatus. Um, how funny is it when a YouTuber takes like 2 months off, like out of nowhere with no indication that they're taking time off, and they come back and they're like, "Hey guys," they always start things off that way. But no, I'm just gonna be straight up. I've been crazy busy. Grad studies has been really busy, though it's starting to slow down a little bit again, which is nice. Like all of my students decided to do work over the spring break, which means I have a ton of stuff to mark. So I've been really busy with that. And you might be wondering, why don't I just record in the evenings? Well, I like to spend time with my fiance. So I do try to make that a really big priority in my life. So sorry, podcast that I just do for fun. And oh man, we've been watching The Hills. I don't know if you remember The Hills. It was like a MTV reality. I say reality in quotations. An MTV reality show in the mid 2000s, which we're pretty convinced was very scripted. And it's awful. It's awful, and we are still watching it. We're on the second season now. Um, I might be close to my breaking point with the show. The first season was pretty entertaining, I would say. They had one character who was just like ridiculous, like the most mid 2000s stereotype. I loved it, and he's not around in the second season, at least not yet. And what we're left with is kind of just a bunch of like pretty dumb characters. Like everyone in the show is very spoiled. You can tell they have very rich parents. It takes place in LA, but yeah. Um and like everyone's so dumb. And the one character that's like kind of like, she'd probably be like the dumb chick in any other show, but because everyone else is so dumb, she's like kind of likable. It's yeah, it's tough. It's just kind of turned into sort of annoying girl drama, but I don't know. We're gonna keep giving it a shot. It's just like everyone in that show is just like, you could tell they have like the richest parents. One of the characters is Caitlyn Jenner's son. Um, so part of the whole Kardashian clan. Brody Jenner, I think his name is. And this is how rich this guy is. At the start of the episode, he was driving a G wagon. In the end of the episode, he was driving an Escalade. Like he had two different. And don't forget, in the mid 2000s, Escalades were like the pimp car, right? Like all of the rappers had an Escalade. I know they're kind of like whatever now. There's actually like a strange amount of Escalades around where I live in BC. It's like, why does everyone have an Escalade? Like, are you just blasting Chingy while you're driving around in your Escalade in 2023? 40-year-old guy who was at his prime in 2004 or whatever. Um, anyways, yeah, we've been watching The Hills, and it sucks. I haven't got around to watching too much hockey, but I've been following what's going on. There's lots of pretty crazy stuff going on in the NHL. Mostly because everything's really tight. We're gonna take a look at the standings really quick just to start things off, because the wild card race in the West and especially the East is pretty tight right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to talking about that. A couple little things I want to talk about, and then I got a little fun segment at the end. I feel like I should give you guys an update on two things first, though. I kind of want to talk about my rec hockey team. I think last time I was on the podcast, we talked about that we made playoffs, though they had the top 7 teams make the playoffs out of 11, or the good playoffs as I call it, because there's a bunch of teams that are kind of fighting for like what's pretty much the 8th place trophy. So yeah, we made the playoffs. We had a 3-game round robin, and so we won the first game. I wasn't at any of these games because I was down south seeing my parents. Right. We won the first game, but we got it was a really chippy game. We got 2 suspensions out of that game, and for the record, like no shame on my guys. Like one guy got in a fight, but the guy he fought was being just an absolute doofus the whole game. And when he kind of explained the situation to me, I was like, dude, I get it. And he only got 2 games for that, but a guy on our team got 5 games for a fight last year. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe he got off the hook. Maybe I'm missing something. And then another guy on our team, he got 2 games because he had his 3rd 10-minute misconduct of the season. It's kind of a weird rule that they have in the league. But like at least 2 of those 10 minutes were really questionable this season. He had some really bad luck with reffing. So the reality is we were without 2 of our, I would say 2 of our best players. I mean, that's their number 1 center. And I think maybe our most steady defenseman, but we got a lot of good defensemen. So I don't want to like rank them, but if we're up by a goal and there's a minute left, he's probably the guy I want on the ice. I think that's what I'm getting at. So in the second game, yeah, we didn't have those two pretty important pieces of our team. And then we lost the game. It was a close one though. My guys, they did their best. But after that game, our goalie was injured. He finished the game, which is nice, but then he texted me right after. He's like, dude, my hamstring's messed up. So we had to get a spare goalie for the last game, and we lost that last game too. And keep in mind, like we haven't had another one of our best players for like over a month now because he's been hurt. So I don't want to make up excuses either because I feel like your team is as good as your worst player. That's the way I see it. Like team depth is an important thing, but I do feel like we were pretty handicapped going into those last 2 games. And we almost got into the semifinals. So the top 4 teams make it to the semis. And we almost got in because of a ridiculous, like, 4-way tie for last. And we just missed out based on point percentage. On the last game of the round robin, we needed a particular team to win by 2 goals for us to get in. And then that team ended up losing 4-0. So, yeah, we didn't get in. It came right down to the wire, but I'm really proud of my guys. We had a good season. We did finish 3rd out of 11 in the regular season. So it was a pretty tight division this season. I don't think we're all probably a bit upset, but I don't think I think we played really well. It was just kind of a tough break in the playoffs. And, I think we'll be hungry next season. And the second thing I want to talk about in this intro that's going on way too long, fantasy hockey. Yeah. So for my fantasy leagues, I'll start with the league that I'm done in. I finished 5th out of 12 in one of my leagues. But I entirely blame just my awful draft. I really realized just how important the draft is in fantasy hockey. For both of my leagues, I'll get into my other league, but I had a terrible draft. I think I drafted Huberdeau first. He's had a bad season. I drafted Barkov second. Barkov's not a bad player, but he's been hurt a lot this year. So he's just been sitting in my IR for what feels like most of the season. I'm exaggerating a bit, but when he's playing, he's great. But I didn't get a lot of games out of him. And then a few other kind of questionable draft picks in there too. But those were the big 2 that stood out to me. And I did get lucky. I managed to get Brandon Montour pretty early in the season, and he's been on fire. He's been a big fantasy pickup for whoever gets them or gets him in your particular league or whatever. So, I got a bit of a home run with him, but overall, I was easily the most active person in that league in terms of moves, like picking up. I used up all of my ads every week, and I think it was the draft that killed me. I didn't have enough like kind of superstar talent. Whereas in my other league, I'm in the finals right now. And I'm looking really good. I think I have like a 170-ish point lead right now. I know we got just under a week left because this is kind of like a 2-weeker. Actually, it might be exactly a week left. and I'm in a pretty good spot. But this is where the draft comes in play. My top guys are on absolute fire right now. I've got Draisaitl, I've got Robertson, I've got Kachuk, and then you got guys that just randomly have really good nights, like Petrangelo. I've got Sorokin in net. Um, I'm leaving off guys. I've got a really good team that's just like on fire these past 2 weeks. Like I was nervous going into the semis because the two guys that finished first and second in the regular season, I was like, okay, it's probably going to come down to these two because they've been pretty dominant all season. I've had a good season, but I've been like sort of the clear number three. I was at number one at points, but I was pretty much the number three guy. And then just in the semis and now in the finals, my team is just on fire. Like Draisaitl, just one of the hottest players in the league right now. I mean, he's been hot all season, but like the Oilers are on this crazy point streak right now. They're like what 11-0-1 in their last 12 or something crazy like that. And Draisaitl's been a big part of that. So, yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to sound too cocky, but I'm looking pretty good to win that league, which is awesome because I did not think I had a chance. I got really lucky with a Tage Thompson injury as well in that semis too. I think the guy who was playing had Thompson on the IR pretty much that whole week, so a little bit of luck in there too. I mean, it's entirely luck, really. That's kind of what fantasy hockey comes down to. Same thing with the other league. Like I got unlucky that Huberdeau has had such a poor season. So, anyways, let's talk about some NHL teams here. So, the standings. Whoopsie daisy. The standings. So the wild card race. Let's take a look at the East right now. I wasn't sure if I was going to include Buffalo on this, but they are kind of in a position to get in, but they're going to need some luck, and they're going to need to win like every game down the stretch. So I don't think Buffalo gets in at this point. I don't think many people are taking Buffalo at this point either. Just look at the numbers, right? But technically, they're still in it. And this is a team with a really explosive offense. You know, if they get lucky with maybe Florida and the Islanders and the Pens having some down games, and then they win those last five, which is very unlikely because they just got a brutal schedule in this last week. Like they got 5 games. I think it's in 8 nights. Because remember, they had that game that was postponed and it got pushed like to next week. So they've got an extra game. So they've got 4 games in 5 nights next week or something like that. So, and you know that like you can see that as games in hand, but when it's so condensed like that, it's not really in the best interest of the team because it's just so taxing. So, Buffalo's going to have to win all of these last games, and they're going to need some luck from those teams that they're chasing, which I don't know because, I mean, you can see it. Florida's on a 5-game heater right now. The Islanders not too bad in their last 10, 6-3-1. They might catch the Pens, but I don't think they get in. And I don't really want the Penguins to get in either. They're definitely still within striking distance. I mean, they're only a point back from both wildcard spots. But I'm tired of the Penguins. I think you know, they might be hitting that point Chicago hit a few years ago, where it's like, okay, we're done. So I don't want the Penguins to get in. I'm not, you know, they could still get in though. Also, man, all 3 of those teams have bad away records. I just noticed that. But except for Buffalo. Buffalo's been great on the road, but bad at home. I didn't really realize those 3 teams have been so bad on the road. And honestly, in the first round, I'm not taking any of those wild card teams. Right now, I'm taking Carolina. I'm taking Boston. It's not even a question. So, Toronto, Tampa is pretty much locked up. The question right now is, I mean, has Toronto locked home ice? It looks like they have. Yeah. Okay, so Toronto's going to have home ice against Tampa. Can Florida technically catch them? No. Okay, so it's locked in. Toronto will have home ice over Tampa. And we'll see if that ends up mattering. It might, really. I mean, Tampa's not been good on the road, so maybe having that extra game in Toronto might be beneficial for the Leafs. I think it might be. And last year I picked Tampa, and This year, it feels a bit different. I might pick Toronto this time. I'll make my bracket next week. I'll try to do that live on the podcast. But I don't know. It's tough. I really don't want to pick Toronto. Just it's my gut, right? Like they haven't given me a reason to pick them yet when it comes to their postseason success. But this year feels different. It's like Toronto feels a lot better than they were last year. They're gonna have some key guys coming back into the lineup, and then Tampa just feels like they're taking a step back now. But then again, Andre Vasilevsky, an absolute legend. He can win this series single-handedly for Tampa. He is the ultimate wild card when it comes to the playoffs. So I don't know. That's going to be a really tough matchup to pick when I make my bracket, and that's going to be a really fun series to watch. In fact, goes without saying. But I think in terms of any year, I would pick Toronto. This might be the year. It might actually be. And then when we look at the Metro, first place is still up for grabs. I still think Carolina is going to finish with that top spot. So we're looking at a New Jersey, New York Rangers first round, which would be a lot of fun. And I'm personally picking the Rangers in that. But I don't know. I'll save all of that for my my little playoff preview bracket, whatever, next week. I hope to do that before the playoffs start. But yeah, the wild card race in the East is pretty tight. And as for the West, it's also pretty tight. It's a little bit less dramatic in a sense. Because like in the East, those three teams that are really duking it out for wild card spots, the three teams duking it out for the two wild card spots, they feel like it feels like they're kind of better teams right now. Whereas Calgary, it's like they've been heating up, pun intended. They've been heating up, but I don't know. I'm not sold on them. Anyways, when you look at the situation here, it's pretty much fighting for the second wildcard spot. Winnipeg, Calgary, and that's it. Nashville's in the conversation still. In fact, I did kind of cut them off here. Maybe I'll get this up on my phone just to hopefully, just to see how close they really are. Oh no, Nashville's actually there. I should have included Nashville in this, but okay, so rewind. There's three teams duking it out for that last wildcard spot. I still think Winnipeg ends up with it, just kind of, the trajectory they've been on. They do have a game in hand, at least on Calgary. I think they have the same amount of games as Nashville, but we'll have to wait and see. It would definitely be interesting if Calgary or Nashville knocked Winnipeg out of that spot. Last night, Seattle clinched, which is very exciting. This expansion team now going into they're in their second season of existence and their first time making the playoffs. So that's very exciting. I don't think they'll do any damage in the playoffs. I'm expecting maybe a 4-game sweep, maybe a five-game series loss for Seattle. I don't think they have what it takes. Just goaltending. I don't think they'll be able to beat whoever comes out of the Pacific, probably Vegas, or whoever comes out of the Central. Actually, it's probably going to be the Central winner who plays Seattle. And I don't think Seattle has a chance in heck against any of those three teams, but who knows? Unexpected things do happen. The race for the number one seed in the Central is tight right now, really tight. Colorado's definitely got the upper hand with a game in hand, but kind of like Buffalo, they've got a lot of games in a pretty small amount of time. And as a team that's had a lot of injury problems this year, I don't know if 5 games in however many nights that is, 8, 9 nights, I don't know if that's good for Colorado. This is definitely going to test their depth. But one thing about Colorado is that they're 8-2, they're 8-2 in their last 10, and they've won 3 in a row. So they're hot. And yeah, so it's a little bit of a different situation than Buffalo. Also, they're comfortably in a playoff spot, and they've clinched, so it's very different from Buffalo. Yeah, then as for the Pacific, the Oilers might catch Vegas. I wouldn't put my money on it, but it could happen. LA's pretty much clinched that number 3 spot, though technically Seattle could catch them. I don't think that's going to happen, though. So we're looking at a likely Edmonton and LA first round. And I think that was the first round last year, too. So that could be fun. And in the Central, who knows, right? Like it's tough to, maybe Minnesota. I think Minnesota's locked in for either that second or third spot. And then the top seed is pretty much going to be Colorado or Dallas, in my opinion. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see with that. But in terms of who I'm like picking out of the West right now, like I still really like Edmonton. And they're heating up at the right time. As a Sharks fan, I've got no one to root for, and I think Edmonton's kind of the team I'm cheering for. And don't get me wrong, I would love to see Seattle go on this like crazy run. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I would say Seattle is the team I'm rooting for, but realistically, I'm going with Edmonton right now. I mean, I still got to make my bracket, but I really like Edmonton. This is a different Edmonton team this year. McDavid and Draisaitl have only gotten better, and we know they can turn it on in the playoffs. So yeah, honestly, like if I'm picking a team going to the Stanley Cup Finals out of the West right now, like I like Edmonton. That sounds crazy. Because kind of like Toronto, it's like, okay, but but they did make the West Finals last year. This could be it. This could be the year. I'm not saying Stanley Cup, but I think they might be the team out of the West for me personally. But I'll save a lot of that for my playoff preview next week. Okay, so I got a couple of quick things I want to talk about before I get into a larger segment in this podcast today. I want to talk about a game that happened on Saturday between San Jose and Arizona. Two teams duking it out for Bedard. And usually I'm not, like this season, I'm not really that happy when San Jose wins, which is a weird feeling, but I want them to have the best odds for Bedard. And it doesn't look like they're going to have the best odds anymore because they've heated up lately. But there was a game against Arizona, a game I would have liked San Jose to lose, but something kind of neat happened out of it, which I wanted to highlight. Just some kind of interesting little milestones, I guess, for some players. So three pretty new San Jose Sharks scored their first goals with the franchise, which I thought was like kind of a weird coincidence. So Jacob Peterson, he got his first goal as a Shark. He didn't have too many career goals, but it was his first goal in a Sharks uniform. Kyle Crisculo, I don't know how to say his name, but he's a rookie. That might have been his first game as a Shark, or one of his first games as a Shark, and he scored a goal. And also right after that, Daniel Gushchin, who also got called up from the Barracuda, he got his first goal as well. So I thought that was really cool. Three guys, and those might have been in a row as well. Maybe not, but. And I remember I was watching that game or I wasn't watching it, but I was keeping an eye on that game because I think Zetterlund was still waiting on his first goal as a Shark. Thrun, that guy they got from Anaheim, the guy who was in the NCAA, the defenseman. I think he's a defenseman. I might be wrong about that, but he could have gotten his first goal as a Shark too. That would have been his first NHL goal as well, I believe. So that would have been exciting, but it didn't happen. However, Noah Gregor, kind of random, but this is a guy who's been with the Sharks for a few seasons now. And he's been good. He's stayed in the lineup. The Sharks organization definitely likes him. And I think he worked his way up from the Barracuda as well. He got his first NHL hat trick, which made me very happy because I've been a fan of Noah Gregor since day one. And it's really cool seeing that guy get a hat trick. I might even make him the thumbnail for this video. That's how happy I am about him getting his first NHL hat trick. So I thought that was kind of cool. One other thing I wanted to highlight. This is not as of Saturday. This is as of today. Erik Karlsson is sitting at 98 points with 4 games remaining. He might be the first defenseman in a while to hit the 100-point mark. And for a while there, I was like, maybe he won't. But it's looking really promising now that he will. He does have that extra gear, so I think he might just pump out 2 points in the next game just to hit that milestone. So I'm very happy for Karlsson. And, there's talks about, is he going to get moved in the offseason? Can he get moved in the offseason? And that's entirely, I think that depends entirely on how much the cap goes up this offseason. Because we don't know yet how much the cap is going to go up. Gary Bettman publicly, he's saying $1 million. And no disrespect to him either, that is the right move, because even if it's probably 4 million, let's say, I'm just throwing that number out there, there's still a chance that it's not going to be 4 million, and that's just Bettman just kind of covering his butt. If he says 1 million, it's going to be at least 1 million, so there's no way he can really be wrong about that. But if it does go up by, let's say, 4 million, that increases the odds of Erik Karlsson getting traded, in my opinion, because more teams, or all teams, have an extra $4 million in cap to work with, because it's the contract. It's the contract that is making an Erik Karlsson trade difficult right now. I think Karlsson wants to go to a winning team. I think he'd be down. I think the Sharks want Karlsson to be successful, so they would have no problem shipping him off somewhere, especially if they're serious about committing to this rebuild. And I think the Timo Meier move, and I think bringing guys like Chris Coolio, I probably said that wrong, Chris Coolio or Gushchin, I think bringing them up, it's a really good sign, bringing them up and then seeing them be successful as well. So it's kind of bringing this segment full circle here. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Sharks, especially at the draft. I will be doing a draft reaction, whether or not I post like the face reveal camera version of that. It really depends on if the Sharks win it. Because obviously if the Sharks win the draft lottery, I'm going to go absolute ballistic. And I'm trying to get dummy viral out here. So, but no matter what, I will post the audio. I will post that to the page. But in terms of the video of that, because I will have a whole setup going during that draft lottery. But yeah, if the Sharks win, I'll post the video because I'm trying to get dummy viral. And if they don't win, I'll just post the audio. And I'm in a pretty good position because, the three teams I really like are the Sharks, the Blue Jackets, and the Coyotes. And all three of those teams are in a pretty good position to get Bedard. But like I said, I think Chicago's the team that needs him the most, as much as that kills me to say as a Sharks fan. But, either way, I think a team that is deserving of Bedard will get Bedard. It'd be cool if it was Columbus, because they've already got a pretty okay team. And bringing in a Bedard would totally just escalate that retool, let's say. But anyways, Sharks, yeah. Another kind of funny thing I want to talk about. This happened, I think, 2 nights ago. And I saw the clip on Instagram, and I thought it was so funny. So, Tampa Bay, New York. By the way, I would love to see these two meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. That'd be so cool. These two teams don't like each other, and they're both very good competitive teams that have had playoff success. And I would love to see these two teams meet in the East Finals. I really would. But anyways, so Tampa, they had a break. It might have been a breakaway. I don't know, but I think it was a breakaway, actually. I can't remember who it was. It might have been like Cernak or someone like that. Or Sorelli. They had a breakaway. They shoot. It goes in because Shesterkin kind of falls into the net a little bit, but it's in his gear, but it crossed the line. So the puck's kind of in his body, and as a former goalie, I can totally relate. The goal is in, but you got to try to sell it, right? Because who knows, right? If they can't see the puck at the camera angle, maybe you could sell it. But he kind of scoots his way out of the net, and then completely out of left field, I love this, Alex Killorn just gives him a jab. So unnecessary. I don't know if he saw a loose puck, but I certainly didn't. And then, okay, you have a player jab one of the best goalies in the league. The Rangers are going to absolutely kill Killorn right now. So huge scrum right after that play. If you haven't seen that whole sequence, you should really watch it. It is hilarious. Just the fact that Killorn just comes out of nowhere and just jab. And again, as a former goalie, that would drive me crazy. And I would want my team to destroy Killorn in that moment. But just as a fan of neither team, just kind of watching that, I thought it was hilarious. I really did. Highly recommend finding that clip. I think it was from 2 nights ago. Funny stuff. I loved it. So I know I'm already at the 30-minute mark of this podcast, but this is kind of the main segment of today's episode. And I had two ideas for today's episode. I had a pretty serious topic, and you guys know how much I like to talk about the serious stuff. And I had kind of a silly topic as well. And I was like, you know what? It's my first podcast back in like 18 days. Let's go with the silly one, okay? And yeah, it's not that silly, and honestly, like, it's the silly topics that I enjoy doing the most on the podcast. Like, picking the 5 worst goal songs a few episodes ago, that was probably the most fun I've had talking to myself on the podcast. So I do like doing these kind of silly segments, but I'm sort of serious about this one too. So, first of all, I have so much appreciation for the guys that run both of the leagues I'm in, both the fantasy leagues. I understand that they're taking time out of their busy schedule to moderate things, especially at the start, especially before the draft. I do appreciate that so much, and I have a lot of fun doing fantasy hockey. There's a stretch there where I wasn't really enjoying it, and I've kind of rekindled that passion, I guess. It was actually funny because in one of my leagues, I pretty much just didn't set my roster for like 5 years, and then last season I tried and I won, but I had McDavid, so bit of an advantage. But but here's one thing about fantasy hockey is I'm getting a little tired of the categories. Like, and again, I get it. Like, if I'm trying to run a good, fair league, I'm doing goals, assists, plus, minus, power play goals, or power play points rather, hits, blocks, shots on goal, the normal stuff. Like, if I'm just trying to make a good league from scratch, I go with the regular categories, right? Wins, maybe saves, right? Shutouts, But lately, I looked at Yahoo and I looked at kind of all of the categories that they offer, and I was like, man, there's some kind of silly ones I would really like to see in a league. So I had this idea. Okay, I call it the Elite Categories Hockey League, the ECHL. And yeah, I gotta get that copyrighted or something, but I haven't decided if I want to really promote this and make this a real thing yet. But I'm thinking about it. I want to make a fantasy hockey league that has some more of like the niche categories, okay? And you'll see at the end of this episode, I'm not gonna make it like too silly, but I want to have some of the categories in there that really makes you think, okay? Like, because usually the guys you pick up, especially if you play categories, you're looking for those like top point scorers, obviously, the guys on the power play. In terms of defensemen, you want the ones that can produce offense, but also block and hit. Like, you kind of want those perfect package players, like the Keandre Miller kind of guys, right? And then for goalies, you want the best goalies, right? You want the guys that get the wins, the guys that get the shutouts, all the starts, right? So, and I wanted to do a different take on it because I really want to make people think. I want guys to think about the depth players, maybe the goalies that they don't get as much recognition because they're not the ones that are getting all the wins. So I took a look at all the categories that Yahoo offers, and I highlighted 5 of them. And these 5 I want to include in my league. Now there's a couple categories I wanted to mention first. And the first one is game-winning goals, and the second one is shutouts. So if you play categories, and I think everybody has had this happen before that plays categories. It's a very close series, or it's a very close matchup that week. Sunday comes around, and the other guy gets the first and only shutout of the week, and then you lose. And I don't like those low quantity categories like game-winning goals and shutouts, especially shutouts. Because usually if you get a shutout, you win that category. And I don't know, I can't explain it. Just part of me really doesn't like that. I don't think it has that big of an impact in points if you play in a points league. And I really enjoyed playing in a points league this year too. This is the first points league I've ever been in. I've only been in categories up till this year. And categories are fun, and I think they make you think a bit more too, which is, that's cool. But I want to take it to the next level. So I highlighted 5 categories there. So shorthanded points. So pretty much if a player gets a point on the penalty kill, so an assist or a goal on the penalty kill, they'll get an extra thing. And they'll get a point for that. Game tying goals. I'm gonna talk about that one. I'll come back to that one. Face-offs won. Okay, so putting a little bit more emphasis on having centermen or maybe guys that can play center. Losses for goalies. Okay, and that's probably the silliest one here, but I'm going to look at the leaders in all of these categories in a second here, and you'll see why losses might not be like the worst category. And when I do losses, I mean a positive, like you get points for losses, okay? So a guy like John Gibson would be more in demand because he gets a lot of losses. Like, I want a league where losses is a positive category. And then the second goalie stat I picked seconds played. I thought that would be kind of a fun one too. So guys who get a lot of starts and don't get pulled. I kind of thought, like, I know it's not a category on Yahoo, but like I thought pulls would be a funny category, like which goalies get like pulled the most, but that gets a little complicated because like there's times when NHL goalies, they get pulled, like they let in a few goals and then you realize they were actually like they had a nagging injury, and it's like, okay, so did they get pulled out of the game because they were sucking, or did they get pulled out of the game because they were hurt? And that kind of opens up another can of worms. But that would be a funny category, but I don't really know how Yahoo would make that work, let alone track it. So yeah, and anyway, so game tying goals, I was a little bit skeptical about that because it would be a little bit more of a low quantity category. Because when you see the leaders, you'll know what I mean. So yeah, and I would have really liked if there was game tying points, but that's not a category. I think game tying points would be a lot better, but unfortunately that's not a category. But I mean, hey, if I'm leaving off game winning goals and shutouts out of this league, I'm okay with putting game tying goals to see how that would go. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you my 12 category league and which categories I went with. And of course, it's more than just these 5. I had some filler categories in there too. So expect to see goals and assists and some of the more normal ones in there. But first, let's take a look at the leaders in each of these categories. So the regular season's pretty much done. So we got a good sample size here. So all of this is after like 78, 79 games. So here are your leaders in shorthanded points. So JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, both Vancouver Canucks, and both are tied with 8 shorthanded points. So this category would make you want to have some more penalty killers on your team because they could get shorthanded points. Now, I feel like this might end up being another low quantity category. So, this might be one of those leagues where I have these categories in place for maybe a season, and if it doesn't go well, or if I don't like how they go, then maybe I change it in the off season, the following off season. And yeah, you see guys like Scott Laughton up there, and then you still get the superstars up there too. Like you still got Connor McDavid up there. You still got Bo Horvat. I almost said Johnny Gaudreau, but that's Frederick Gaudreau. But you have some more depth guys there too, and you got Mitch Marner as well. So there's still an incentive to have those top scorers in this league, obviously. But you might want to track which ones actually are getting time on the penalty kill, like Connor McDavid. I mean, man, this player, he's so good. Like, penalty kill, power play. He's going to be the Art Ross Trophy winner this year. He's going to be the Hart Trophy. He's just like the perfect package right now, Connor McDavid. Okay, so let's take a look at game-tying goals. So here's why I was a bit skeptical. So first of all, game-tying goals are the very last column there. The website I got this from, the Clutch Players. Yeah, take this with a grain of salt because these numbers might actually be wrong, and this was the only place I could find game tying goals. So this should be for the season, but I'm not certain. Like, I kind of have a feeling this might be like third period stats or something. But, anyways, this should give you an idea of what sort of players you would see there. And of course, it's the top line guys, but there are some surprises in there too. You might not have expected to see like Pavel Zacha up there or Jordan Stahl, but there are some of the guys that you might, you might kind of expect some of the more clutch players in there. Of course, you have McDavid in there still. You have Braden Point in there too. So you still have like your superstars. Um, but again, it gets you thinking outside the box. Like there might be more of an incentive to get those clutch players, I guess, for this category. And again, I think this might end up being kind of a low quantity category, but I think it might still be better than something like shutouts, in my opinion. Okay. So yeah, that should give you a bit of an idea for that category. But of the 5 categories, this is probably the one I'm kind of like, eh. Here's one I would love to do. This is probably the one I'm most excited about, and that's Face-Offs 1. And as you can see, very high quantity. Like Patrice Bergeron, he's one face-off away or one face-off win away from 1,000. So very high quantity category, and I love this. I really do. It puts a bit more emphasis on which centermen you have and which ones are winning the most draws. So when you have the draft before this league, you might see Patrice Bergeron move up the ranks a bit more. You might see Sidney Crosby move up the ranks a bit more. And then you see guys like Bo Horvat, Kopitar, and then some surprises in there too. I mean, JT Compher, he can play multiple positions in fantasy, at least this season, and he gets a lot of face-off wins too, Thomas Hertl, he's a guy who I see in the available players category quite often, and he would be more in demand in this category, right? So, yeah, you got to be a bit more strategic with your centers. And, if I did this league, I'd probably include a utility category as well. I forgot to put that on the last slide, so spoiler, but just so you have a bit more room for that extra center. And a lot of these guys are guys that produce offense as well. So, again, another incentive to have those superstars. Is McDavid even in this? He's not, but Draisaitl is. So, yeah, there you go. Face-Offs 1, that's probably the category I'm most psyched about. And kind of the funniest category would be losses. So, right now, those are your league leaders in losses. And I'm going to get to seconds played right after, too. And you'll see there's some overlap because a lot of this, it's not just guys on bad teams, but it's goalies that get a lot of starts. Okay, so you see Connor Hellebuck up there. He's 9 games above 500, but he's third in losses because he starts so many games. So this would really get you thinking about which goalies you draft and which goalies you pick up. I mean, you see Peter Mrazek up there. Like, he's a goalie that's usually available, and he would be much more in demand. You see Vasilevsky's still up there. Sorokin and Saros, like, those are 3 of the top goalies in the league. And they're up there in the losses category because they start so many games. So, yeah, I think that would be interesting, treating losses as a positive category. Because I think you will see, a bit more of a spread when it comes to goalie pickups, right? A guy like Allmark wouldn't thrive too much in this league. Guys who just don't get a ton of starts, but usually win when they start. So you would have to be a bit more strategic. You even see Bobrovsky up there. He's having a pretty okay season, but he starts so many games that he's going to get a ton of losses. And if you draft a goalie and they end up having kind of a poor season, that might not be the end of the world in this league. Like, if you drafted Markstrom, and Markstrom had a poor season this year, he would actually do okay in this league because he's been picking up the losses. So I think that would be a fun category, and I really think that would make people in this league think. So the last category I want to talk about is seconds played. I thought this would just be kind of a funny thing. it goes a bit beyond games played, though of course there's a correlation there. I mean, if you look at, I mean, right now these guys are all ordered by time on ice. This is in minutes right now, but obviously, if there was a seconds played category, it would fall under here too. It's the same thing, right? Minutes played, seconds played, same thing. You could do hours played if you want; it would be the same. But there's a correlation between time on ice and games started, games played. Like you can see the guys in the 60s are at the top, high 50s. There's a pretty clear correlation there. And this kind of incentivizes goalies that have quality starts, goalies that don't get pulled a whole lot. So ideally, you want that goalie that gets a lot of losses, but also gives their team a chance and doesn't get pulled, or who has like a scumbag coach and refuses to pull them, which you don't see too much these days after the whole Patrick Waugh Montreal thing. But yeah, I think that would be another interesting category. You can see the league leaders, Saros, Hellebuck again. Hellebuck would be a pretty high in demand goalie in this league. Same with Vasilevsky. Like Vasilevsky's got 21 losses, and he has the third most time on ice. Jake Ottinger, there's a guy who doesn't have a ton of losses though, so something to think about. Oh, nice. Shout out to Gorgiev. I didn't think Gorgiev was going to get that many. Like, I thought it would be closer to like 50-50 with Francouz, but Francouz has been hurt so much at Gorgiev's, he is the starter. And I know that was announced before the season, but yeah. Also, wow, Jordan Binnington, 29 penalty minutes. That's something. Okay. So yeah, seconds played, time on ice. I think that would be a good one too. And here is the verdict. Okay, so I picked 12 categories. And here's what I went with. Like I said, I need some filler categories in there too. So I went with some of the more normal ones that you see in fantasy hockey. Goals, assists, PIMs, shots. You got to have hits in there. You have to have hits, and you have to have blocks. Those were the first two I added beyond the niche ones I have in here. Hits and blocks. You have to have hits and blocks in a category league. It keeps it interesting. It makes you think. It makes you randomly pick up a guy like, I don't know, Marcus Foligno or whoever, Jake Middleton. Like, it's the kind of categories that make you think. But there needs to be those categories that does incentivize having superstars. So goals, assists, and you can swap some of these out too. You can put power play points in there if you want. I kind of wish I did, actually. And, if I'm still iffy about shorthanded points or game-tying goals, I might swap that out with power play points. But for the sake of the memes, I need to have those two categories in here. So, yeah, so those are the player stats I went with. As with goalie stats, as expected, losses are there. Losses as a positive category. So you want the goalie that gets more losses. Seconds played, and then I put saves up there too. There is probably some correlation between seconds played and saves anyways, but saves is a pretty standard goalie category. I thought I would include that just because I felt like I needed one more goalie category. So saves seems like the logical one. I didn't want to put wins because you got wins and losses. That's kind of... I know wins are such a normal category in fantasy hockey, and there's probably people watching this that think this is like totally stupid, but it's not your league, And hey, if you do want to be part of this league, especially if I know you, because right now most of my listeners are people I know, drop me a message on Instagram, drop me a message on Facebook, and if I get enough interest, I might get this going. But if you're like a total random internet person, maybe don't message me. But no offense. Hey, leave a comment. Who knows, right? So yeah, those are the goalie categories. I should have 12 here. Let me count. Yeah, I got 12 categories. So yeah, and then a few additional league notes because every league has its own kind of like sort of custom, kind of smaller settings as well. So this is a categories league, not a points league. I'm going to do 5 ads per week because I think the more ads, the better. I don't even know if you can do 6, but if you can, I don't know, I might do 6, but 5, I don't want to get too ridiculous. 5 probably the way to go, I would say. I'm in a league that has 4 ads a week. I'm in a league that has 5, and I prefer the 5. I like getting silly with it. I like having other people in the league that are just as invested as I am. So the more ads, the better. And then, like I said before, I forgot to add this to the slide, but I would have a utility category as well. So 2 centers, 2 right wings, 2 left wings, 4D, and a utility category on top of 2 goalie spots as well. So just because this league would be kind of dependent on centermen, and there's so many guys in the NHL on Yahoo that only play center. So I kind of want to have that utility option in case you want to roll that third center to have more face-off wins, for example. Or if you want to have another guy from just another position, another skater for another position just to get more in a category. So I would have a utility category in this too. I've got one league that has a utility category and one that doesn't, and I kind of prefer having the extra spot there that you can have any player position in. So this is the Elite Categories Hockey League, and once again, if you're interested, let me know. If you think this is so silly and I should never even consider it, hey, leave a comment and let me know. But honestly, I want to mix things up. I want to be in a league that has a bit of silliness in it. But once again, I really do appreciate the guys that run the 2 leagues I'm in, because it's been a lot of fun. Even finishing like 5th in my other league, I still had a blast, and I do appreciate that. But I want a silly league, damn it. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to leave a like. Feel free to subscribe as well. We're trying to get to 10 subscribers by the end of 2023. And I'm sure my regular listeners are tired of hearing that. But hey, if you know anyone that might be interested in the podcast, feel free to fire it their way. Because maybe they need something nice to listen to. I can't guarantee when the next episode will be. I'll try to do one this weekend. It is a long weekend. But I definitely do plan on doing one next weekend before the first round starts, because I want to make my bracket on this podcast and kind of talk you through my kind of mindset here. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this Easter weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon.